Welcome back. The Transport Secretary has urged the London Mayor not to fine people on the first day of the expanded ULEZ scheme, saying it was not reasonable to dish out penalties when the TfL website was down.
With the ultra-low emission zone now in place across most of Greater London, angry drivers have also been taking matters into their own hands and vandalising signs and vandalising cameras.
Well, joining us now is Leo Murray from climate change action group Possible.
And also joining us is Nick Freeman, a criminal defence lawyer who's also known as Mr. Loophole. Let's just start with you, if we may, Leo. Obviously, this is a bone of contention. We've seen the violence in the street. We've seen cameras being ripped down. We've seen cameras being cut, spray painted. People, a lot of people actually very angry about what is going on, very opposed to ULEZ. They say there's been no consultation. No one was asked whether they wanted this. And this is Sadiq Khan just sticking to his guns and making sure that this goes through. By the way, it also raises £2.5 million every single day. What do you think of it?
We're in favour of it. You know, children that are growing up in London are breathing air that is toxic, and it's affecting their lung performance. You know, it would affect these children for the rest of their lives. My own daughter's asthmatic. I'm in favour of this, and so is our charity, right? I think the interesting thing about the the Blade Runner stuff, the vandalising cameras. I mean, I think the most extraordinary thing about it is that I've seen Ian Duncan Smith, who's the former leader of the Conservative Party, saying that he is happy about this vandalism and he supports it. Now, this is someone who's claimed to be strong on law and order in the past. And the contrast with the way that Just Stop Oil protesters have been treated, and bear in mind, Just Stop Oil protesters, they go with their face unmasked, they show up and they face the consequences of their actions because they believe in what they're doing. They believe they're on the side of right. They believe history will vindicate them. And they're acting in a long tradition of civil disobedience in this country. You know, those two lads who held up some traffic on the M25, they're in prison for 3 years, those boys. One of them's got a baby, right? These people are masked up. They're doing it at night. What does that say about whether they think they're actually in the right? What does that say about whether they think they're acting in the public interest? You know, the fact that they're not prepared to face the consequences, and yet the way they're treated, Ian Duncan Smith saying he supports them.
Yeah.
I just find it absolutely incredible. I find that absolutely incredible.
Yeah, let me just bring Nick in on this. Sorry to interrupt you there, Leo. Let's bring Nick in on this point. Nick, what do you think to what Leo was saying there about the seeming double standard between the way in which Just Stop Oil protesters and ULEZ protesters have been treated by both MPs and the law?
Well, I think I don't approve of anyone who breaks the law. And what's happening with the cameras, whatever your view is about ULEZ and the way it's brought in, you're embarking upon criminal behaviour. And to answer Leo's rhetorical question, why are they hiding themselves? Obviously, they're engaging in criminal activity and they don't want to get caught. They don't want to spend time behind bars. So I think that's wrong. I don't approve of what the oil protesters are doing either, because they're affecting people going about their everyday job. So I don't think either are correct. But I think at the moment there is a great deal more sympathy with ULEZ because it literally affects everyone in Greater London who is driving a car that falls foul of these provisions.
Yeah, and Nick, it isn't just people in London, is it? Of course, there are those people outside the M25, and I've heard some terrible stories of people who are trying to get to work. They're trying to get their cancer treated. They're trying to get to Heathrow Airport, for example. They then have to pay this charge. Their vehicles aren't compliant. The government really, or Sadiq Khan hasn't given them enough time to change their cars. They were told to get diesel cars. They did so in good faith. They're caught in the middle of this. Now, one of the other things that's come up is many of the surrounding boroughs. Many of the let me just finish. Some of the surrounding boroughs, many of them have refused to put up signage. So there is this case, isn't there, of Noel Wilcox, who actually won his case. This was about the LEZ, the LEZ zone, because there was not adequate signage. What is the legal position on that?
Well, he won his case actually in central London. The decision was in October 21. And the adjudicator found, number one, that the signs weren't authorised, and number two, that they didn't supply, in any event, sufficient information. And in particular, what they're missing, what they need to inform the driver of is actually it's a charge area. So they need to have the C in an appropriate format to advise drivers You know, not just that it's a zone which is low emission zone, but actually there is a consequence of that. And that consequence is that there is a charge to pay. So that's central London. And the interesting thing is, in that case, the adjudicator adjourned the case for 3 weeks to give TfL an opportunity of coming before the tribunal and producing evidence to demonstrate that the signs were authorised and, in fact, were compliant. They didn't take that opportunity, so he concluded that he can't be satisfied that either of those two provisions were met. So that's in central London. And in my view, the tribunal came to the correct decision. And I'm of the view that actually all the fines and all the monies that have been raised so far, I think 320 million in the last 2 years, have in fact been raised unlawfully by TfL. Now, as far as the other areas, I think there is 7 boroughs, 6 of whom are not putting signs up, and there are no warning signs outside those areas. Quite simply, if there is no signage, if there is inadequate signage, then the fines are unenforceable. Now, I'm not advocating that people try and take the law into their own hands, but what I am advocating is if you get a fine, you challenge it to TfL and you go immediately from there, who will reject it, to the tribunal. And very soon there will be an appeal to the commissioner. Interestingly enough, TfL did not appeal Mr. Wilcox's case.
Indeed.
They claimed they'd won it, and then they accepted they hadn't won it. They didn't appeal it. They didn't take advantage of the opportunity offered by the adjudicator. And so, in my view, we have a situation in central London and all surrounding areas.
Unfortunately, we're just going to have to cut in there, Nick. We haven't got much time, but thank you so much for joining us, Leo Murray and Nick Freeman. Well, coming up after the break.